Twisted people, it's your girl here, Chauncey K Robinson, Twisted CKR, and I am here with my co-host today.
Woo! It's your boy, Michael Damian.
Yes, and welcome to those of you who are joining us in the live chat, on the live stream, and also those of you who are watching the replay, because MOON, that spells we are doing the reaction and review for episode 3 of the 2020 miniseries of Stephen King's The Stand. And we're also doing this on New Year's Eve, so we're a little festive today. Happy New Year. I'm sure all of us, plenty of us, are going to be completely okay with sending 2020 back to yeah, exactly. So so that's we won't, and it's one of those things, but The Stand waits for no one. It's giving us the post-apocalyptic vibes, and so we are watching a plague movie.
Hey, Cage.
Hey Cage, hey Damon Robinson, Happy New Year's to y'all. Thank you for being here. So episode 3, and I would be remiss if I did not give a shout out to two people who watch our replay, who basically, we had a whole debate last episode, not even a debate, we were all wondering what was good with Nick Andros and him missing his eye by the time we met him in Boulder, and what was good with that. And so we found out, because our Marcus Gaudry and Diane Williams, who watched the show, hey y'all, everyone give a wave to them. They basically answered our question from what was going on with the book. And the answer is, indeed, Nick does lose his eye in the book. It is something that happens to him in the book. So this is something that the 90s miniseries did not actually show, but probably because pretty boy Rob Lowe maybe had it in his contract that he always had to have his full face. I don't know.
He can only get one shiner per Stephen King miniseries.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, that's what we've been seeing with this 2020 version, is that they are really adding a lot of stuff from the book that we did not see perhaps in the 90s miniseries. So that was the answer. Shout out to those two. I said I would give y'all a shout out, keep my words. Thank you for that.
Hats off to you.
Yeah, and anyone, yes, hats off. And anyone, like I said, we're watching this, we're fans of the book, we're fans of the other adaptations, and we're, getting into this adaptation. But if, you notice something that we didn't say, please let us know in the comments, in the live chat, and all that, because this is an immersive community experience. So we're going to get, hi, Karen Robinson. That's my mama, y'all.
Karen!
Yeah. So, okay. So what we're going to do today is our reaction overall, of course, basically, and don't worry, we will be comparing differences in the book and differences in the, in this adaptation, but we won't do that within. So for those of you who are new to this, don't worry, you won't get a whole bunch of book talk that you don't want to see. So, so let's get into it. What was your overall reaction of this episode, Michael?
Well, I'm not plagiarizing Cage, but we have the same opinion. I loved it. Some of my other favorite shows, I found out that the 3rd episode is the best to keep me going. And I don't know if that's just a trend in TV shows. I'm talking about a show that came out a decade ago called Spartacus. But The Stand, I think it actually picked up my interest more. I related a little better to the characters, and I thought the plot was easier to follow.
Yeah, Cage in the live chat, he's saying this episode actually picked up my interest more than the other episodes did. And yeah, there's definitely some truth to that I felt as well when it came to this episode. I honestly, I wrote down in my notes, okay, now it feels like we're getting somewhere. I also felt like also that there was, if I was new to this series, I would also feel as though now I'm also kind of finding out stuff. I felt like we saw Mother Abigail a lot more, who we didn't see before. And and she actually, like in the dream with Nick, we actually saw her explain a bit more. So if I was new to it, I felt like I'd be like, oh, okay, now I kind of know what's going on here. I love that we saw Tom Cullen, Moon. Finally, he was a great addition to this episode. And I almost feel like, not necessarily, I felt like we still needed to know Stu in the first episode of The Stand because he's such a central character. But I would have even maybe with the way they told this story, would have liked more for them to have maybe switched it and made it so that that maybe we had got to know like Nick and them a little bit earlier than the other ones that we saw. So, and yes, like Damon Robinson is saying in the chat, we actually got to understand Nadine better. David is saying better than he ever had. And I can honestly say, that was something, and we'll talk about it with the 90s comparison, but we actually got to know Nadine a bit more, when it comes to her role in the community. And we're going to get into that too. Although I do feel like there were still some shortcomings when it came to kind of showcasing that, but I think it was good that we got a focus on her this episode as well. So, so overall, I think we both are vibing with this episode more than we did the previous two episodes. I think to me, out of the three so far, the second episode was the weakest. And I think this third episode is perhaps their strongest one. Yeah. So, all right. So let's jump into what actually happened during the blank page episode. Okay. So they're still doing this whole flashback thing. And I, like we were talking about last night, I basically feel like the way they're doing this is Boulder is the present. That's what you're doing. And it's kind of like this idea of this is that the show is centered on this community that's trying to keep humanity going. And you'll get flashbacks of their life. That's the way this setup is. And that's what we're going to have to be dealing with for at least the first half of the series as they tell everyone's backstory. Like I said, I'm not going to sound like a broken record, but I would have preferred they do chronological order and had started before Boulder, but that's what we're doing. So I just kind of have come to adapt to that.
I'm really, really happy though that the changes they made, and they didn't try to go the Walking Dead route, because I thought going into the show that, they were going to pull into Boulder and there was going to be a rival faction that wants to fight them, and it's going to go that way. It's going to be like, we're going to war. No, we're going to war with you. And I'm glad that hasn't happened.
Well, that didn't happen in the book.
No, but I mean, if the show started out, I know it doesn't, but the show started out very Walking Dead-ish.
Yeah, like just the whole thing of you're starting off in a community, you don't know how everyone got there at all. So we're just going to do it all in flashbacks, which is like, okay, that's a choice. Okay. And also we got to find out what the planchette was, which is a play on the Ouija board. It just doesn't have the actual board. I feel like the Ouija board may be the lazy man's version of the planchette.
It might be.
It's actually, I guess it's the game that's supposed to actually like move around the actual thing and tell you what's going on, as opposed to with the Ouija board, it just goes to the letters. So we found out that basically Nadine, we got a young Nadine, and we saw from the beginning that he has always, Darkman, Randall Flax has always had his sights set on Nadine to be his queen. I thought that was a really cool opening shot, opening episode. Her hair is still blonde. So that was the answer to my question last week, whether or not what they were going to do with her hair, because I'm not being aesthetic, like, girly girl. But the thing was, in the book, it was a big thing of her having really stark black hair. And I guess they've just gone with her being naturally blonde. Okay. So that's what they're doing with that. But that was a cool flashback of, Nadine has always had this presence in her life of Randall Flagg. So she's always kind of been under his spell in a way.
Yeah. Wow. That was really well done. I completely forgot for a hot second watching the show that Randall Flagg has been pretty much the force of evil in the Steven universe, because for a hot minute I was like, wait a second, is this all Nadine's fault? And then it's like, oh, wait, that's right. It wasn't because she played with a Ouija board when she was a kid. Flagg has always been around, and the virus was probably always going to happen in this version of the universe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I remember when you said, was this all her fault because she opened it up for random flag? I'm like, no, we're not going to do this thing where we blame it on the woman for
No,
the
don't
end of the
cancel
world.
me.
We're not going to do
Yeah.
Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden or anything.
She shouldn't have bit the apple. No, I take that back. Don't cancel me, please.
Yes. So we got Nadine being my queen, and then we got the traveler, the stranger who came in a car. They crucified him, which might be foreshadowing for what may happen when people go to Vegas and they're against Randall Flagg. And we find out information about what's going on in Vegas. So it's a little bit more of, we know now that Randall Flagg's Vegas is now established, that they got this whole thing going on. And like I said, for people who didn't know that, now you finally know, because in episode 1 and 2, in those desert dreams that we kept seeing, you kept seeing little like showgirl signs and stuff. And it was kind of like, well, what does that mean? Okay, I keep saying something about Vegas and showgirls. What is this? You know, if you were new to the story. So now they finally put it in wording that, okay, he's in Vegas, Sin City, kind of on the nose, but he's in Vegas and he's setting up shop. And the stranger came to send a message to Mother Abigail. So Mother Abigail, who we got to see more of this episode, which was very nice. I think we all were wondering. I think we were all wondering last episode if there was some schedule conflicts with The View, because we kept just only hearing Whoopi's like voice. So it was good to see a bit more of her. And I just think that stranger scene that they had was so chilling. That was probably my favorite scene of the episode, was when the whole "I have a message for you" kind of a deal, and the crows.
You know what I loved about that? I loved that they show the aftermath of a crucifixion instead of the thing actually happening, because what didn't happen like on the television just added to the theory of we don't know what happened, and makes that even more intense of a visual.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like, you know, he's you know, within the danger, and the stranger's eyes going black and things like that. It was just, it was, you know, I think that was probably another thing I liked about this episode. They really revved up the supernatural aspect of like, okay, supernatural stuff is going down in this story, y'all. And this isn't just people are just trying to survive because there was a plague. There was definitely something. We got a little bit of glimpse of that in the end of episode 2 with Randall and Lloyd. But we got even more in your face in a diddlier kind of way with Randall Flagg, this one, and the stranger. And I thought it was also interesting that kind of jumping around, because there was a couple of different plots in this episode. Like I said, it felt like they were finally getting started. And so there was the thing with the leadership that's going on in Boulder. And that was interesting. But before we even get to that, we got to get to the fact that we met Glenn. Was it Glenn? Oh my God. I think we lost Michael. Not sure what happened there. Maybe his computer. But yeah, we got just a little tech thing, y'all. I don't know. I think he's getting back on. So we'll see, hopefully. I'm sure he'll be back on, y'all. New Year's, you know, this is what happens with live streams. It happens.
I think I'm back. Sorry, guys.
What happened there?
I was like, I like the 90s version better. I'm closing now. I don't. It said my internet went away.
Oh, that's weird. My internet's fine, and we're in the same house.
Yeah, I know, right? If I said anything wrong, like I upset some people, and I apologize, but that's what I'm brought on the show for.
That is funny. No, I was going to say that, you know, we met, I wrote down his name. We met Glenn Bateman in this one, the sociologist, psychologist guy. So that was pretty interesting. And I felt like these flashbacks were better too. When we met Glenn and we met Nick and Tom, like I felt like the flashbacks were way better than the first 2 episodes. And, you know, Stu comes across Glenn, but he actually meets, Stu actually meets this. They showed that he met Franny and Harold along the way, but Harold rejected him. So he ends up meeting with Glenn. And so Glenn's really cool. I loved that whole setup and getting a glimpse into his life of, just thinking, hey, this is where we're at. This is where the world is. So someone kind of giving the commentary of what happened. I felt like it kind of hit close to home a little bit with,
Yeah, that one statement, it was when people were dying, it was like, it's hard to believe other people are dying from something else other than Captain Trips. I'm like, oh, whoo, wow, that's that felt real.
Yeah, exactly. And so you had that going on, and the whole idea of, at first, Glenn was willing to just kind of stay where he was, and, Stu enjoyed it for a bit, but it was like, okay, something bigger is happening. We find out that Glenn has been painting Mother Abigail and others. So that was also pretty interesting that it was starting to come together. I was like, you know what? If I was new to this, I totally would get something from this flashback. Good on you guys. We did also get a flashback of Larry meeting Nadine and Joe as well, which I felt was a little cheesy because they did the whole tell me storytelling instead of show me. And we got confirmation that Rita killed herself. Rita, who we met the last episode, played by Heather Graham. And it was like, the last person I was with killed themselves. So maybe that means I'm not supposed to be with anyone. I'm like, dramatic much? Like, heck of people are dying of the plague. Like, Larry, I don't know. I'm still not feeling Larry as much as I want to, because he was one of my faves, but.
Right. He started out with a lot of good potential, and maybe if his role is as familiar as it was in the past, no spoilers, maybe like he still has a lot of room for growth left, but yeah, I really love these characters in this episode more than I did in the other ones. Like, they did an amazing job with Glenn.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what's so funny is that, he's supposed to be one of the older ones, but nowadays he's supposed to be like 57 in the books, but now 57 looks like this guy.
My God, right?
He was playing in the 90s, which was like, who was a great actor, but they had him playing a well-weathered, withered kind of older dude, and now he's like the young hip professor who smokes weed on the who vapes and whatnot. So
that was I loved it too, because you went from like a Joe Biden lovable character in the 90s to like, in case you didn't know, school's out, and then you got like this cool hip dude just vaping away in the pandemic, like probably most of us have done in real life.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe half of the audience.
Yes. So then, we got some confirmations. Rita's dead. That was the last we're seeing of Heather Graham, y'all, which kind of sucked because she was all on screen for all of a total of 20 minutes.
Right. So, you can't do that to Heather.
Yeah. And we also saw that I noted that Franny, her pregnancy is going along. She wondered about the immunity of her baby, which, felt to me like foreshadowing of them maybe wondering, is her baby going to be okay? Since we also kind of were showed by inference that Jess, the baby's father, died. Because we saw a picture of Jess, who I will know is a Black man. So perhaps the first baby born in the post-apocalyptic world will be a baby of color. Woo, woo. Winning? I'm not sure.
A little bit of hope.
Yeah. And then, okay, so, we were talking about how much we loved Tom, but Cage in the chat is saying, the only complaint I have about Tom is they seem to pigeonhole as someone on the autism spectrum rather than having other issues. That may be because I'm on the spectrum, but still. Yeah, I mean, that's a very valid question, concern to have, because, when it comes to representation, and I think I also was a little worried when I knew Tom was coming on, because I'm like, how are they going to portray this character? He was a fave of mine in a way in the 90s series, but it was also like he was played kind of, a little bit I felt like I enjoyed this one a little bit more because, he's aware of he's aware that, he had the speech of, I don't have the social cues, and he actually has a pretty cool backstories in the book, of a character going through things and how he's grown, the bullying he dealt with, his parents, the father and the mother and stuff. And I wonder if they're going to show that a bit more in this miniseries, because I feel like the actor, even from the first showing of him, I felt like, okay, this guy's going to be capable of carrying that out, I think, of kind of showing that. So I think maybe we'll see a little bit more of the other other issues, his backstory that we have a little bit more in the book. So one can hope, because when you have that kind of character that you don't always see sometimes, it can be that pressure of like, let's get this right. Let's not just make this a caricature of stereotypes and whatnot. So that's really a good point there. So, but like I said, I was just happy to see Nick and Tom. I felt like I was like, okay, now we have the stand.
Right. I loved them. And I even loved Rob Lowe and the guy who plays Patrick from SpongeBob when they were together. And that's probably why he played him a little slow. And I don't know why, if it was because watching that, I learned at the time that guy is Patrick Star from SpongeBob. And I'm glad they did choose to handle it, with a bit better more care.
Yeah, I agree. So
are we losing internet?
No, I'm good. Are you okay? Yeah, you're good.
Okay, here we are. Cool.
Yeah. I don't know what's going on. It must be the computer, perhaps.
YTK, man.
I don't know. Okay, so we got a few other things. We got the thing, like I said, we got kind of, that was the majority of stuff that went down this episode. We also Nick getting beat up.
Yeah.
I
wonder if they're going to go into the backstory and like actually show us instead of telling like the fight.
Well, we saw it. We saw it that episode. He got beat up in the actual
the whole thing get carried out, like the guys getting like hunted down and the realization that like, I don't know. What I loved about this one, if this is confusing to anyone, I apologize.
Yeah.
But what I liked about this one is they kind of showed the other side that they didn't show in the original miniseries.
Mm-hmm.
And it just felt, the original miniseries felt more of a play. When like Nick woke up in jail and he found out that one of the guys who beat him up was in there. And this one actually felt real. And I love the fact that they were actually in a hospital, and it felt better overall.
Yeah. And then I think you also in those small moments got to see who Nick was as well in this one, because the guy beats him up and he still takes care of him. He still wipes down his forehead. And I'm like, and even with the dream sequence with Nick and Randall Flagg, which was also a very cool dream sequence.
Yeah.
And the dream with Nick and Mother Abigail, those were probably the best dream sequences to me of the series so far. And so what you had was seeing a glimpse of who Nick was, like why he was like, nah, I'm not good with you, Randall Flagg. I don't want to have anything to do. I don't know who you are. You're promising me stuff. I'm not feeling you. And then with Nick, with Mother Abigail, it was like, I don't believe in God. That's what he said, but he's still drawn to Mother Abigail and Mother Abigail explaining things. I thought it was also interesting that Randall Flagg seemingly in this one originally wanted Nick to be his right-hand man, because we remember in the second episode, he said he wanted Lloyd to be it. So maybe Randall already knew that Mother Abigail had plans for Nick, Yeah,
and also the devil lies to people. He is the great deceiver, and that felt like a really good betrayal, kind of like a low key, and it really showed that Randall Flagg isn't loyal to anyone but himself.
Yeah, that too. And that, as clearly he's an evil guy. So there's this, sort of thing with that. And then, Damon Robinson in the chat is also asking, is Nadine's story the same as the book, which we'll get to in the next section when we talk about the difference with the book, because there are some differences. But so far, I will say, out of the two, this 2020 version is actually a little bit closer of an adaptation of the book than the 90s version was, for better or worse, given how they're doing it. So there's kudos for that, but also like it seems like it drags a little bit because of the fact they're trying to cram some details in that we didn't get before. Like I didn't understand why we necessarily needed a little bit of the flashback of Joe, the little boy Joe, because we already got that. But then suddenly we're learning how Larry gave him the guitar. And I'm like, okay, but we already knew that. And we also already got that he didn't like Harold for whatever reason. I mean, maybe they needed that. So when he walked in on Nadine kind of having a Ouija board planchette orgasm for random flags, that he'd be weirded out. I'm not sure. But,
yeah.
That
was a crazy scene, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was very crazy scene. I like that too. Like
that was good.
I mean, it basically with Nadine, it revealed that she's been a spy from the beginning. There's no convincing her. She's okay with, she's already promised herself seemingly to Randall Flagg. While that's a little bit different from the other adaptation that we saw. But in this one, it's already that this was revealed in this episode that she's a spy and that she wants to basically help kill Mother Abigail under Randall Flagg. And now with the wording, she's going to probably trying to trigger or light the spark as Randall wants her to do with Harold. So that'll be something. It was interesting that they had it so that she was a straight up spy from the get-go though, because it was like, you would think maybe she'd have a little bit more of a, I don't know, a crisis of conscience or something. So since Joe and Larry, it's like, are you okay with this dark man dude? And she's already all hot for him. She's like so lonely and all that. I'm like, wow, already? Like, okay. But I mean, when someone's been grooming you since you were like 10, I guess, that's, I guess that's where she is. But that was very interesting too, to see that she's basically one of the spies. So something to watch out for. And I also thought it was interesting when they were talking about the leadership of the thing, Glenn and Franny and Nick and them kind of talking like, we're not the real leaders. We're just who Mother Abigail put in, front. And Glenn's like, we should put it to a vote. But then Franny's like, well, we put it to a vote and we lose, then we're not doing God's will. So there's this weird kind of power dynamics that we're seeing in Boulder 2 this episode. Yeah. What did you think about that?
Yeah, I thought that was really well done. And I know this is an ultimate like biblical story of good and evil. And it's funny if you just kind of take that moment that they're in and apply that to real life. And how would you feel if a politician said, oh yeah, this is God's will, just hand me my thing. But I really agreed with Glenn on, he's a very intelligent guy. He's a teacher. He's worldly and he knows how the country works. And I think that deep down, now that Glenn is out and about, he just wants America or the world, for that matter, to go back to the way it was.
Well, I don't know if he wants it to go back to the way it was. I think his whole idea is when things start to go downhill, that
or structurally,
like
as with a vote,
more so
way,
like
shape, or form.
Yeah, I get you on that. It's kind of like he is saying, like, there needs to be transparency. Like, we can't just, because Mother Abigail is saying we're the leaders for whatever reason, we don't even know why. And we're just kind of going along with it. Why is that? So I guess that'll play a little bit into it. It wasn't a big focus for this episode, but I think it'll probably make a play for it a little bit more in the other episode. I think the big switch was the situation with Nadine, with finding out that she was who she was in terms of being Randall Flagg's girl.
You know what I love about this whole thing in general is it's, on one hand, it is a wildly diverse show that has everybody from like all walks of life coming together and surviving a plague. However, most of the women in this show were blonde.
Okay. You're like, let's diversify.
There's so much diversity, but every woman is blonde.
Yeah.
Like, I just think that's great. Maybe that's why they had to kill off Rita. Like, we already have 3.
We've reached our quota.
We got to take it down to 2.
Yeah. No, that may be a thing. Who knows? And, Damon in the chat is saying they got Mother Abigail snapping at people. Right? That was something we noticed, too, where we were like, Mother Abigail's got a little edge to her in this episode, or in this miniseries. She's got a little edge, which we'll talk about with the differences in the book. Funny enough, I think this version of Mother Abigail might be a bit closer to the book Mother Abigail than the sweet Ruby Dee and how she played her, which was kind of a little bit more sweet and wholesome all the way throughout. Whoopi's playing her with a bit more attitude, which I think is actually more book accurate, which is
believe it is too, because like Mother Abigail in the original was basically Jesus of like loving all the time,
kind of with no flaws,
and Whoopi Goldberg, her Mother Abigail is a woman who, you know, she didn't necessarily want this, but now that she has what she has, she's going to follow through.
Yeah,
and like she's more of a person than like a mythical figure.
Yeah, more of a messiah who does no wrong kind of thing, which is pretty interesting that they're doing it that way necessarily. And I think the other thing of this episode was Kojak. We saw the dog. I'm all about furry animals, and it was also kind of sad because they took a moment in the flashback with Glenn and Stu to explain that animals got it also just as bad when it came to Captain Trips, that basically the only ones that were really spared were deer and rats. And that made me kind of sad.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's why, you know, because you always wonder in zombie movies if basically all the animals are dead because the zombies ate all the animals or whatnot. So it's interesting to see that with this Plague movie, they made it a point to say, well, the animals got it too, which except for Kojak, who was one of the few who actually got to survive.
I think the reason for that is because this was made in the Captain Trips virus was made in a military base, and a lot of armies have like animals to work along with them. So maybe that was an unfortunate byproduct of Captain Trips.
Exactly.
But I'm glad Kojak is alive. I love that.
Yeah, it was so sweet. It was so sweet seeing Kojak. I was like, yes, Kojak. Woo! I'm here for Kojak. But yeah, I think that's the kind of the majority of the stuff with the happenings in the episode. So we found out Nadine is a spy straight up. She's about to go over to Harold to try to figure out some stuff. You know, and then we have Nick's backstory. We finally met Tom Cullen, who and that's another thing. What's always kind of weird about the show is because before you get a flashback of someone, you don't see them around Boulder for some reason. So it's kind of like we don't see Tom. So I kept thinking, okay, I don't see Tom in Boulder. Did they make it so he didn't show up with Nick? And then you find out he did show up with Nick, but we still don't know where Tom actually is as far as this episode goes. Although those who read the book probably have an idea where he's at right now. But that was also interesting. We also got to meet the stranger and the fact that we know that they're crucifying people in Vegas. So those are kind of the major happenings this episode, which I think we both enjoyed. And there was some throwaway stuff, but overall, I think this was a solid episode. Okay. So we did the episode. So let's go to the differences, because there's people in the chat who are definitely making the comparisons and talking about the book and stuff, which you know, it's kind of something you have to do when it comes to this episode and with the show as overall. Cajun in the Cage in the chat is saying, it's funny I find The Stand such a daunting task to read, yet I've read the Dark Tower books, the Song of Ice and Fire books through book 5, the entire Harry Potter series, and still have done to read. That's it's I didn't get through the Stand book. I now get that's my book. I now get like bits and pieces because I'm watching this miniseries, so I go through some of it to find out, but it's a lot.
The words are that small, so I get it's the Bible. Like it's literally this.
Yeah.
Plus the additional things that King gives you as a treat, we're clocked in at 1,141 pages.
Yeah, because I think the book I have is like the unabridged too. So you get added stuff and everything. Yeah. And we also have Brent in the chat. Hi, Brent, who is saying regarding the episode, I like this episode more than the rest. And I think that's what we were saying also early on. I think for me, this third episode was basically where it started. I was like, okay, now I feel like I'm getting into it, because I was kind of so about this series. So if I was like, is this, I don't know, if it keeps going down this road, it's going to be kind of a feeling of meh when it comes to this. And this third episode, I was like, okay, now I feel like we're getting something, you know. And Damon in the chat is also saying, we got to hear a jazzed up version of Baby Do You Dig Your Man. Did we hear that? Did we hear that in this episode? I didn't hear Baby Can You Dig Your Man.
Was that a riff on the guitar he was playing? Because they're being really subtle.
Because I didn't hear anyone sing the words. I haven't heard anyone sing the words. I thought he was about to when they were in the stadium, and then he didn't sing anything. And I was like, okay, we about to hear Baby Can You Dig Your Man. And there was no Baby Can You Dig Your Man, at least no lyrics. So I don't know when we're going to actually hear that, unless we missed it. If we missed it, let us know. Maybe we missed it. But with the book differences, okay, so Brent, I think Damon and Brent are saying that was in the baseball field scene, but he didn't sing the lyrics.
He was only playing the guitar.
Okay, so I guess that's like this is what I'm talking about for fans. It's like, if you know the song by heart and stuff, then you're gonna be like, oh, that's Baby Can You Dig Your Man? But for people who are new to this series, they're gonna be like, okay, he's just riffing on the guitar. I wonder what we're gonna hear Baby Can't You Hear. You know what I mean? It's like
I'm beginning to wonder if they cast this guy and then realize that he can't sing. So it's like
you're wondering, like, can this guy sing? Like, maybe they were just like, I don't know, because it just like, okay, so like hardcore fans know that was Baby Can You Dig Your Man. Even I didn't realize that was Baby Can. I thought he was about to start singing lyrics to it, but then he didn't sing. So it's kind of like, okay, I guess we're just gonna get the acoustic type vibe. Okay, that's
unplugged.
Unplugged. Exactly. So with the differences of the book and stuff, one difference that we have not pointed out yet is when it comes to Ralph Brenter. Ralph Brenter was in the 90s miniseries. He's also in the book, The Stand, and he's actually, you wouldn't realize it, but he's actually being played by a woman this one, and it's Ray Brenter. It's the woman who walked in with Mother Abigail.
That was her pop name.
Yeah, that was her, Lady Abigail. Yeah, she walked in with Mother Abigail in the hospital scene. So that's actually Ralph. And those who know what happens to Ralph later on in the mini 90 series with him and Larry, you can kind of maybe wonder if that's going to be the same fate for Ray now, Ralph, who is now Ray when it comes to it. So that was one gender swap. I think we're set to see another gender swap later on in this series as well. But they did switch. They switched the characters for this one. The other difference is Nadine a little bit. Like I was talking about, her hair color. It's not so Damon's telling us he did say the words. I did not. I gotta rewatch it. Maybe I was more focused on Joe. I don't know if I heard him saying Baby Can't. Maybe he did. I don't know. We watched it at like 1 a.m.
Maybe we'll have
it dropped. So
maybe we'll have a dream and we'll hear it. We'll be like, oh my God, it's Larry.
Okay. Corrected. We are corrected in that regard.
Thank you.
But okay, so the difference with Nadine, because Damon was asking earlier in the chat, is Nadine's story the same? This one, funny enough, that they are closer to the book in this adaptation than they was in the 90s series. Aside from her hair, I'm going to keep griping on that. Her hair is supposed to be black, but they made her blonde. But the way it happens in the book is that since she was young, since she was very young, she had always had this connection to Randall Flagg, and the planchette was actually in the book. That scene that happened was an actual scene from the book. So very much since from the beginning, she's been getting groomed for being Randall Flagg's wife. So that's very much, it wasn't just suddenly I felt this way or something like that. Like they kind of played it in the 90s. It was very explicit. So it's way closer in this one. So, yeah. I felt like those were the main two differences. And with Mother Abigail, the main difference, because in the book, she has moments, because Mother Abigail is about 108 years old. That's what we're told in terms of, if you like look at the backstory. Mother Abigail is 108, and in the book she's a bit more bitter. She goes back and forth because she's outlived her 3 husbands, she's outlived all her children, she's outlived her grandchildren, her great grandchildren, and she goes back and forth with being, happy to take up the call for God because she's a deeply religious woman, but then she's also very bitter at times because she's thinking, why am I still alive? Funny enough, in the book, she's kind of like, why am I still alive? I've outlived everyone I love. I just want to die peacefully on my land. And in the book, she actually gets a prophecy, a prophetic thought that tells her that she's meant to die somewhere else. And so she goes back and forth between being bitter and being, willing to take up the call, which kind of makes sense because with the 90s version, all of a sudden it seemed like she feels like she's fallen from God and she can't hear him anymore because it came out of nowhere because Ruby Dee was playing her so angelic. I'm like, how could Ruby Dee fall out of favor? But in this one, I feel like we could see how she could feel like she could fall out of favor if they go that route. So I think, funny enough, I think this Mother Abigail is more book accurate. So that's pretty interesting. And then, Kay just saying previously I would have been of the, I'll watch it for nostalgia's sake, but this episode actually excited me. Exactly. This episode, like I was saying, I felt like this expanded the audience. If you were new to this, you could actually be like, okay, what is this show about? Maybe I'll give it a go, although I don't know everything. Brent Showers is asking, curious if we are gonna see more about the slaves and crucifixions in Las Vegas in this adaptation. In the original series, we really didn't see any of that. I think we are gonna see a little bit of that, definitely, because they took a moment in this one to actually really mention it with the stranger. And there's a character who we saw briefly. I think her name was Dylan or Dylan. Dyalna, something like that. And
Dylan.
But she was the one in the 90s one who went to go be a spy in Vegas. And there was a whole backstory to her life too, that we don't see. And then we see later on of what was going on in Vegas. So I think we may get a glimpse of that if they are doing what we kind of thought maybe in the last episode, that they're making room to focus on characters we didn't see in the 90s version, which dealt with those plot lines. So I would hope, I feel like I hope we see more of what's going on in Vegas a bit more. Cause that was my one shortcoming, I felt like, of the 90s one, where we saw, talks and stuff, but we didn't see like really how it was ran and how corrupt it was.
Yeah, exactly. I loved it because it seemed like you had Randall Flagg creating everything for 4 parts. And then all of a sudden it's like, don't mess with my disco, Nadine. And then we don't see anything other than one of people being remorseful and then other people kind of partying. And then at the very last second, they're like, oops, we've been wrong this whole time. And there's no, it was too quick of a climax, really, in the made-for-TV one in the early days. But I really love the promise that the thought of slaves and crucifixion in Los Angeles, Las Vegas, I'm just anywhere in the Southwest anyway. But in Las Vegas, I'm looking forward to a more grim world that 2020 television is going to allow us to do.
Yeah,
2021.
I agree with that. I feel like we're getting a setup to see more of Vegas and more of Randall Flagg. You don't get Alex Skarsgård to play that part if you're not going to really showcase more scenes of what's going to go down, what's happening in Vegas. So hopefully we see more of that. And I'm excited for that too. I think the other thing, like we had noted with Glenn, was that in the 90s one, funny enough, in the book, he's only supposed to be 57 in the actual book. So this is more accurate, but I feel like maybe back in the 90s and earlier, people thought 57 looked like 80 or something because of the actors.
Older.
Yeah.
People looked older back in the day.
Yeah, I don't know.
Movies, yeah.
Maybe. So it's kind of like it was a great actor that played that character in the 90s one, and he was very lovable. But he was clearly, supposed to kind of give the elderly vibe. And with Glenn in this one, it's not the elderly vibe. He just happens, he's 57. So yeah.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, at the end of the original miniseries, he was crippled almost with arthritis. That
he was. But the funny thing, no, can't. I'm
talking about the original one. No,
okay, but it may happen, so can't do that spoiler.
Well, I'm sorry, guys.
But it's funny enough, it does play into it a little bit because of the fact of, even in the book, although his age was 57. In the book, they did have it so he suffered from arthritis. So it was kind of like, but people, people in their 40s be suffering from arthritis these days. So it's not, hard to believe. I just thought that was an interesting choice to have an accurate portrayal of that character. That was pretty good. I'm trying to think go ahead.
I said I apologize for any spoilers that I may have or not have dropped. But the awesome guys, you guys in the comment section, are killing it with your king knowledge. So great job. You brought your A game. So I'm going to try not to spoil it, but thanks for watching, everybody. And we're still talking. But yeah. You guys, I love all of you.
Yeah. Also, I was going to say, because Cage has been bringing up the whole situation with Tom, is his backstory in the book is interesting as well, that we didn't get in the 90s series. He kind of talked about it a little bit in the 90s series of, how people used to think how he was and stuff. But in the book, in that one, he had dealt with issues with his parents. His father was kind of borderline abusive, and his mother was someone he cared about deeply. And he would deal with situations when he was at school, and there was a certain state of mind that he went in order to kind of clear his mind and whatnot. I don't know if we're going to see that in this situation, but I think it's really ripe for a deeper, less one-dimensional portrayal of this character. And I hope we get that, because I feel like that was a shortcoming of the 90s one, that you didn't get to see the layers that they had of Tom, because there actually are, especially even with his backstory.
Yeah.
So hopefully we get that. But yeah, overall, I thought this episode was boss. I honestly, I was like, okay, we're finally...
oh my God, Cage, yes.
Cage is saying maybe Flag's world will resemble Caesar's Legion from Fallout. For all you Fallout players, for those of you who don't know, that is a game.
I was about to wear my Fallout shirt today because it's post-apocalyptic, right? And it's New Year's Eve. But yes, Caesar's Legion from Fallout New Vegas. Oh man, I was thinking that too.
Fallout is a post-apocalyptic game as well, y'all, for those who aren't gamer savvy.
And they crucify people in Vegas in the game. So there is actually a point to the reference. Great job, Paige.
I wonder who got the idea first. Did Fallout get the idea from Stan?
Probably Stephen King. Yeah.
That'd be interesting. Yeah, it all connects. But I think overall, we felt like Blank Page was the best. I felt like Blank Page was the best episode of this series so far.
Yeah.
I feel like things are now getting started. We also got to see that there's a battle going on. Like Flag told, Mother Abigail, I'm coming for you. I got your blood in my fist. Whatever that means. He's like, I got your blood in my fist. And it was a war. He declared war, which I'm like, okay, finally, we're getting somewhere with that.
Whew. Yeah, that was menacing.
But I'm just glad that they got more of the supernatural. And I don't know, I have different favorites than I did in the 90s one that I have for this one. I feel like Franny, I'm still so on Franny. It's not as dynamic as Molly Ringwald later. No. But so far, my faves have been Tom. Nick emerged as my fave, and I'm still loving Stu, because you can't hate James Marsden.
Yeah, no, you can't.
Dimples, as Harold called him.
Yeah,
this episode.
That one, I didn't bring this up. Sorry to go back, but I loved how the camera set up perfectly. Harold is over here. Let me try to position this. Harold's over here. Fran is over here, and in walks Stu, just right in the middle, and just literally coming between everyone.
Yeah.
It was really good. Really good direction. Yeah.
And Diane Williams. Diane, you're mini famous right now because we gave you a shout out in the beginning of this episode. Like I said I would, about you were the one of the two who answered our question about Nick. And Diane Williams saying, oh my God, I just got done watching episode 3 like 5 minutes ago. And I really love this episode. I think that's the consensus right now. We all loved this episode. I loved it way better than the first two. I feel like we're finally getting somewhere to the crux of what this is. And I think the show does better when it leans into the supernatural. I think the show also does better when it gives a little bit more of a dynamic of like Randall and what's going on with Flag. And hopefully, like Brent was saying, hopefully we'll get more of Vegas.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something that we're looking into. And so, okay, so for the game, for our last bit before we close it out for New Year's Eve, which character, and let us know in the chat, y'all, and also in the replay. Thank you for watching. For those of you who are live streaming and those who are also watching us in the replay, your watching and your commenting is so appreciated.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it. But we're going to play a game, which is saying, which character did you identify with the most in this episode?
I'm going to have to go with Glenn, because I used to have a dog that I really loved. I taught college before, contrary to my hair that I currently have now. And something the hair brings up is that in this pandemic, I spent a lot of my time vaping too. So I was like, yeah, this is great. Finally, a relatable guy who feels like 2020 teacher just not having a job, hanging out. And I don't paint, but I'm glad he found something to do, because I related to that so hard in this episode.
Yeah, and before I jump, that makes sense. I can see that with you. Yeah, I see the Glenn. With Damon, before we get to my answer, he's saying that part of Tom's backstory that we were just talking about will explain a lot about what's gonna happen with his character later. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if they do the things that's supposed to happen in the book, I think it'll be interesting. I think it will explain a bit more than the 90s one did, with the things that happen with his character and the journey that he has to go and how they do it and stuff. I think it will explain it. So when I saw it, I was like, okay, that explains what happened in the other one, and way better than the 90s one showed. So like I said, for better or worse, they're actually being a lot more book accurate with this one. So I guess with me, I don't, there wasn't a character that I felt like I identified with like the whole entire episode. Probably, I guess I'll go with Glenn a little bit too, mainly only in the thing where he was saying about the leadership, where he was saying, we can't just go into this whole thing of blind faith, because that's how we got in this world in the first place, with people not being transparent about leadership, people not, letting people choose for themselves and taking everyone's opinion seriously. And so when he was having that conversation, I felt that. I was like, I felt what he was saying. Because I was like, I get that. It's like people should vote, like, so that no one's feeling that they're in a community where they're like, these people are my leaders because this other woman tells me so, because I'm having dreams about her. So I felt that. And I also felt a little bit of a connection with Nick, with the idea of being wronged by someone and still feeling compelled to like not let that person or that situation corrupt you to the point where you become an evil person, that you're still someone who tries to help the other person and whatnot. So I was feeling that too as well. But let us know in the chat, y'all, who y'all felt like y'all were agreeing with more. And also in the replay, those who are watching the replay, thank you again for watching. But yeah, do you have any kind of last thoughts about episode 3? People are still talking about episode 3 in the chat as well.
Yeah.
Do you have any kind of last thoughts about this, or where you see the series going now? Do you have more hope for the series now that we've done episode 3?
Yeah, I do. I'm glad that there's charisma, or not just one character with charisma and then 2 other people that we focus on that kind of don't. And I'm really, really enjoying that. And Cage in the comments brought up, let me warn you, fellow King fans, don't watch Cell. I read the book the week it came out, like a decade or 2 ago, maybe 15 years ago now. And I didn't know there was a movie adaptation until like a few months ago. And I watched it, and it looks like the budget ran out in the 3rd act. And it feels like a rough draft of a pandemic movie that was inspired by the zombie god George Romero.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I agree with you on that, Cage.
Cage also said, he gave an answer to our game. He said, I'm going to go with Tom Cullen in terms of who he identifies with most. Even though I'm a bit sharper, I do still make awkward comments in public situations. So he's definitely feeling Tom. I honestly feel like Tom's going to become my favorite character of this season, of this series. I really do. I mean, as soon as he started talking, I was like, I'm gonna love this guy. It's like this is my character right here.
He's fun. He means well, and hopefully in the new world we can party with him. Like, you know, I like Tom.
Yeah. So so all right, so I don't know if anyone else is playing the game on who identifies with who, but thank you all for joining us for our New Year's Eve reaction of The Stand episode 3, Blank Page. I feel like I should also do a game where I ask people, did they find the part where they actually say the title of the episode in the episode, because that's happened with every single one of these. They did it with Pocket Saver, and they did it with Blank Page. With Nick's dream of Mother Abigail, she did the whole thing, life's a blank page, and I was like, oh, there's the episode name right there.
That's how we got it.
I feel like that's the new game, that we have to do a game or drinking it, I don't know, where we every time where I'm going to ask y'all in the chat and the replay to let us know where in the episode do you hear the title of the episode? Because I don't think they went, too far with it. And Damon Robinson in chat is saying, I like the episode the best so far. I need to read the book. It's definitely a thing. I think the book, I'm always encouraging people to read. I feel like I need to listen to my own words and actually finish that book for once. Because I always start the Stand book and I never get through it. But I feel like it's definitely, it makes a lot of it make a lot more sense. And maybe if you read the book, it also makes you appreciate the fact that they're being very close to the adaptation with this 2021 than they were with the 90s one.
Yeah, as far as adaptations go, like I took a screenwriting adaptation class before, and the fact that you can take this book and like adaptation in any form is an art. And you have to really pick and choose at the end of the day what will come out and actually make a thorough story. At the same time, you just can't tell fans that are fans, diehard fans of the show, something they've seen before. So I feel like in the beginning it was a little rocky, but as episode 3 has shown, it's picked up, and I think they're on the right track. I hope I'm not wrong.
I agree. And Diane in the chat is saying, I'm having a hard time with Nadine just because of the actor who plays the character. Wish it was a different person. Yes, we kind of said that in that set. I was like, Nadine played by Amber Heard. Pause. Because she's not everyone's favorite person for various reasons.
I mean, I'm kind of glad Nadine. What?
I'm worried that they went for blonde because maybe she didn't want to dye her hair. I don't know. Because I'm just like,
right?
Like saying her real life drama with Johnny Depp has affected my view of her, which poisons my enjoyment of the character Nadine. I think you. That's a question, it's the whole thing of, separating the actor from the role, or more so being able, can she act it enough where you can kind of forget what you've heard about her? And so far, we're not getting a lot of it. So it's kind of hard. You kind of see Amber Heard playing Nadine, which can be hard given what we know. So yeah, it's a bit much, especially since I think her character is going to be such a central focus because of the role she plays of being Randall's like queen. So
I wonder if she actually had to do some hard deep dives into becoming the role of Nadine, or if it was just a everyday thing.
Yeah. Well,
anyway.
Also, let's give a special shout out to Cage because yesterday was his birthday. So happy
birthday!
Yeah, happy birthday, Cage. So that was the episode. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you for those of you who came live and watched it with us. Thank you for those who are watching the replay. Please comment down below with your thoughts, who you identify with. What did you think of this episode? Do you think this episode basically finally got this season started? Let me know. Comment down below in the comments and also in the chat. Thank you all for watching. Have a happy, safe New Year. going to be great new stuff of horror. I'm hoping to dive into even more than before. So let's continue to get creepy together, y'all. Thank you so much.
MOON. That says let's get creepy together.
Okay. Good night, y'all. Good night.